Back in 2003 and was thrust into weather almost immediately. Now, you were thrust into weather in Columbus, Ohio, too. I know that. He's covered everything from blizzards in Chicago, see, I told you, to hurricanes along the coast to tornadoes in the plains. In 2009, Mike broadcast the Weather Channel's first ever tornado live from Wyoming while storm chasing with Bettes-2012. Mike does the annual chase with Dr. Greg Forbes every May. He gets to go to beautiful Oklahoma and chase. He was involved, in fact, if I'm not mistaken, wasn't it the May 10th event that you guys kind of got things started and chase and everything like that. So Mike has been in the chase situation almost too close. Something Mike and I have in common. I grew up in Cleveland, Ohio, and there's a TV meteorologist there called Dick Goddard. He's like 78 years old, and he's still on the air. But any kid that grew up in Cleveland and watched Dick Goddard usually ends up in this business. So, but what Mike is going to be talking to us, if you got to watch his reporting after the Joplin tornado last May, he went through some very dramatic situations and experiences in Joplin, and he's going to present to you the Joplin tornado back May 22nd, 2011. So, Mike?
Thank you very much, Dan. It's a real pleasure to be here, and what a turnout. So I'm very excited to be here. I want to give you a little background about, and Dan gave you a little bit here about what we do at the Weather Channel as far as severe weather season goes, and kind of our MO that began during Vortex-2 in 2009, where we decided we would tag along with the project, and our whole point was to show what Vortex-2 was doing, show live tornado, help people understand what was going on with tornadoes. But there are challenges when it comes to broadcasting because things move rather slowly, logistically. And so it's difficult to broadcast a live tornado with the current capabilities that most of the industry has. So I'm going to give you a little background. This is a satellite truck. A lot of you have probably seen these before. Big giant truck, big giant satellite dish. These things move really slowly. They're not really conducive for broadcasting a tornado. You've got to put the hydraulic jacks down, you've got to put the dish up. It takes about 20 minutes to set up your cables and the lights and the camera, and by the time you're all set up and you're ready to broadcast, the tornado is gone. So this wasn't going to work for us when we started out with Vortex-2. However, we have this device. And it looks like a Doppler on wheels. This is actually a satellite truck. So inside that dome is a satellite dish, and it's a gyro-stabilized satellite dish, which has been retrofitted from a cruise ship. And so once it locks onto the satellite up in space, it's good to go, and you can move, which is a lot better when you're trying to chase a tornado. And so this is the only vehicle of its kind in the United States. So we're very, very privileged to have this with us. We went on a Vortex-2 back in 2009, 2010. However, inside the cab here, right on the dash, is a camera. And so we can broadcast right out of the dash of this vehicle. But you also notice up on top of the vehicle here, there are some antennas. And those antennas are actually microwave receivers. And so I actually ride in this. I don't ride in the satellite truck, I get to ride in the nice Suburban. And this actually has, on the back, it also has a microwave little antenna. It's right there. You see this little black antenna right here? There's a camera mounted on the dash inside this car. And so the two vehicles talk to each other wirelessly. So as long as this vehicle and the satellite truck are within about 100 yards of each other, I can actually broadcast wirelessly on the go in high definition from the comfort of the passenger seat. It's pretty cool stuff. It really is. So this is how we broadcast during Vortex-2. Captured some live tornadoes. It was pretty awesome stuff. And we also have a cameraman that sits in the back seat, and you can see he's got a big antenna on the back of his camera as well. So this is me and Dr. Forbes last year in Kansas, and he just hops right out, and we can just walk around, do whatever we want, and we can do it all wirelessly and quickly. So the key here is doing it quickly, because tornadoes are so quick, right? So this is how we went the first 2 years of Vortex 2, and then last year the Weather Channel decided we would continue on our own. There was no more Vortex. And so we'd go ahead and we would chase on our own, and we set out for the whole month of May to do some tornado chasing with the exact same setup. So the big event ended up being the big events ended up being in April. And in May, the first couple of weeks, there wasn't a lot of real chaseable days. The day of the Joplin tornado, we started out in Kansas City. And we were going to head south. The HRR model was pumping out something very close to Joplin, so we decided we would target Joplin that day. We were actually going to go there. And I'm going to walk you through the radars and where we were and what we were doing at the time. So up in the upper left-hand corner here will be the time. Joplin indicator in Missouri, and then down here is Oklahoma. So it's kind of a tri-state area right in here. So this is 55 after. I'm going to advance this, and you can see at the time we broadcast live on this, and it was just to me it was a regular old thunderstorm. Barely had any hail, little pea-sized hail, pretty decent rain. You know, it had some slight rotation to it, and you can actually see that just south and east of the star at this point. Some little weak rotation developing, you know, potentially this weak little hook just south of Columbus. At the time, though, it wasn't that impressive, to be honest with you. And so we decided we'd go ahead and follow it. It started actually a little bit earlier than we thought, about an hour or two earlier than we thought that storms would initiate that day. So that right there is at 5 o'clock. This is 5 after, and you can see how it doesn't look all that impressive. There's no hook echo on it. There's hail up in the pink, just off to the north and east of Columbus. So most of this up in here is some hail. We decided we're going to go south. There's a road down here, 66, and we're going to pick that up and head toward Joplin, head to the east. So there's the star right there in blue. And now follow that. We're down here still. There's hail out ahead of us. It's kind of split in two almost here. It's, again, not that impressive. No tornado on this right now, although it is tornado warned at this time. 14 after, again, not any real indications of a strong tornado anywhere within this at all. However, notice our location. I want to point out something particular down here. Look what's happening down toward Miami, Oklahoma. Now this ends up playing a pretty significant role in how this all pans out. And everything's quickly approaching Joplin. Now notice 19 after, we're starting to get into a fairly gnarly position here as things look like they're about to start to develop almost right on top of us. And there we go, more rain. This is 24 after, and this is about half after. This is about 5:30, 5:29 5:29 Central Time, I should say. Now notice we're right in course some heavier rain, and there's a little maybe inflow notch in here, potentially a hook developing. The problem is, it's raining cats and dogs. And it's almost blinding rain, and the hail starts to come down on us as well. And you can't broadcast through heavy rain or hail. The satellite signal from your truck to the satellite in space gets interrupted. You need a nice clear view of the southern sky, and you need, you can broadcast through rain, but not heavy rain, and certainly not through hail. So at basically this time, here's the shot from our dash. This is 5:30. I'm not sure if there's any audio on that. There should be some audio on that. But anyway, we're getting pounded with golf ball size hail here. It's 5:30, and look how dark it is. So that's what we're in at 5:30 in the afternoon, late May. It should be nice and bright outside. So fast forward 34 after, and you can see we're in some pretty nasty stuff right now. The hail core is around us, and we're stopped. We can't drive any farther because it's just too difficult to drive. And it looks like a little hook is now starting to form roughly a half mile from our location. The hook is developing right in here. Wow. So we're stopped at this point, and 34 after is the first report of weak tornado on the southwest side of Joplin. This is 39 after, and you can definitely see now, we're still stopped. Right here is where your tornado is, wow. Just southwest of Joplin, very well defined here on the hook echo. We're still stopped, unfortunately, we can't broadcast. 4 minutes later, there's a significant tornado that's gone through Joplin. Now you're at EF5 at 43 past the hour, and we're just now on the move in behind it. We, at this point, still have no idea there's a tornado just in front of us. we're completely obscured by rain. We have our scanners on, and we're just now hearing that there's a possible tornado in Joplin as we hear over our scanners that we've got in our vehicles. We still don't know what's really going on in front of us. It just, to us it's been a pretty significant storm. Maybe there was a little bit of damage. 48 after, and now you can see even a very significant tornado with the debris ball signature now south and east of Joplin, and we're on the move farther east now as well. Again, EF5 at this point, and at 48 after, we're now hearing reports of more damage, and we're now rolling into a neighborhood that has some roof damage, some trees down, and to me it looks more like EF0, EF1 damage. We're like, yeah, hey, something's happened here. We're probably going to need to broadcast as soon as we can. Still, the rain is too hard. If you look to the south of the star, it's all heavy rain to the southern sky, and we need an unobscured view of the southern sky in order to broadcast. So we're still not able to broadcast. I decided we'd call the Weather Channel and phone in a report. And so our first phoned in report is at 51 past the hour. So this is just minutes after the tornado occurs. There's a close-up view. You can see a very, it's as impressive a reflectivity as you'll see, with a clear white dot in the middle of that, which is very likely debris that's being picked up. And this whole thing is likely debris. So we're very significant tornado here. Here's our position. We're roughly 3 miles as the bird flies from this tornado. Still don't know exactly what's going on yet. We have no idea that this big of a tornado has gone through town. We just can't see it. So now 53 past, and we are now rolling into town. And the tornado itself is now weakened a little bit. EF3 at this point as it crosses I-44 and does some damage across I-44. 58 after, we head farther east into more significant damage. Tornado weakens, right turns, heads south of I-44, and at 3 after, the rain starts to let up quite a bit. And at this point, we're just now starting to reestablish our signal with the Weather Channel. This is 29 minutes after the tornado hit, and so we're just now able to get some pictures back to the Weather Channel as the rain lets up a little bit and the tornado now dissipates. Here's a 3D view of the tornado. If you look especially off to the right, you'll see this area right here is the actual tornado, this right in here. And there's a better view of how it's developed. 43 past the hour. Very good vertical motion to it. And then here as well, very well defined EF5 tornado at this point. Our location, where we end up rolling up to, just by chance, happens to be right where it began its EF5 damage. We started out in a neighborhood just on the outskirts, about right here, just on the outskirts of the EF4 damage, where there were some trees down and what have you. Then we came in on 20th Street right here. We dropped south on Maiden Lane and made it right to a firehouse, and a traffic jam and power lines, and at the time we couldn't get any audio, but the pictures that we first broadcast looked like this, and the anchors in the studio at about 3 past the hour. This is about 29 minutes after the tornado hit. These are the first pictures. There's still even lightning in the storm behind it, but you can see trees down in the distance there. You'll see the hospital. Everything's kind of flattened though at this point. No power poles, trees are gone, etc. So that happened at 29 minutes after the tornado, and this is the first thing that we saw when we came down Maiden Lane. This is the firehouse, and this is an interesting story. We get there, the firefighters actually took refuge back in the left side of the screen here. There was a safe room that they went into. They were in there, and the tornado came basically right over them. And then there's this vehicle right here, this white car. There was a family in this car.
Oh, man.
The firefighters had no idea they were even there. This family had no place to go, so they rolled up to the firehouse. They rolled up to the firehouse. They tried to get in. Firefighters couldn't hear them. They got hit in their car by the tornado. Firefighters immediately come out of the firehouse. They're trying to figure out what the heck just happened. They see this family in this car and they immediately get to work and they start rescuing this family right in their own parking lot. Luckily, everyone in that car survived. Most of the damage was to the trunk. But they were all trapped inside their vehicle. They couldn't open the doors. They were all jammed. So the firefighters were pulling them out of the car right away. It was a pretty amazing sight to see. Head down into town, which is, this is about 3 or 4 blocks from that firehouse. That's St. John's Hospital. Many of you have probably seen that. And this is just a little bit after. This is probably about 45 minutes after they'll hit. Firefighters from all the firehouses are already responding. 2 of the firehouses were destroyed, including the firehouse I just showed you. Look at the foreground here. There is a gas pump that's on its side. That came from up the street about 1/4 mile.
Holy crap.
It got thrown into this neighborhood. There's a closer view of the hospital with the life flight helicopter that has been destroyed. Affectionately known, I believe, as the Pink Lady or Pink Pig or something like that, that they all joked about. A little bit farther down the street, and as we're broadcasting, we'll move around and show a lot of damage, and this is all off 26th Street, very close to where the hospital is. All this is within a couple of blocks. This is a theater that has been destroyed, and the cars in the parking lot have been ripped up as well. I've never really seen this many vehicles. It hit the hospital parking lot, so there were a lot of cars there. Hundreds of cars were damaged in the immediate area.
Jeez.
And you can see just what it did here. It kind of piled them up in a little mountain. Some of them, like, you could not even tell what they were unless you read the name on the engine block. It was sometimes very difficult to tell what the heck they were. This is actually a pickup truck.
Oh my gosh.
If you can believe that. You can maybe see the bed in the back there, but look at the vehicles all around. They're all pretty smashed. Even the big, tough, 4-door F-250 smashed, beyond recognition in a lot of instances. And another pickup truck here, which, if you were inside, you were in a very, very bad place. In this instance, the best place for you to be was certainly underground. The vehicle was not going to offer you any protection whatsoever. And again, mangled beyond belief. Most of these cars were all hit in the parking lot of the hospital. So all this happening very, very quickly, which is actually very unusual for broadcast media. Normally, an event like this happens, you hear about it, and you have to travel to it. The Weather Channel headquarters is in Atlanta, Georgia. It's going to take us a good day to get to Joplin and broadcast, and a lot of this immediateness is gone then. And in most instances, that's how it happens. Local stations usually do a much better job of being there pretty quickly. In this instance, we were already there. We actually had even beat the Joplin stations on air before they could even broadcast. Some of them didn't have power, and so they were handicapped to actually broadcast what was going on. We were operating, obviously, on our satellite truck and generator power. We were able to broadcast very quickly, which is very, very unusual to be this quick after a disaster. And it takes its toll. You see things that you don't want to see. Many of you have probably seen the video on YouTube, and you can see, as far as the eye can see, everything is flat. No power poles, no trees, no nothing. This went on for miles. And I've got to say, it was very difficult to see all of that. We saw things we didn't want to see. People being pulled from rubble. Very, very difficult things to look at when you're talking about 160 people killed. And so it was very difficult to broadcast. I actually had a moment there where it was very difficult to compose myself on air. And I, it happens. You like to think if you've covered a lot of these things, and I have many, many, many times, but not that quickly. And so it has a different impact on you when you're there. And a lot of you here are first responders, or you're there very, very quickly. It's different when you see it with your own 2 eyes. Anyway, I'll show you some more pictures here. This is Cunningham Park, which is right across the street from the hospital. And you can see how damaged it is. Now, I just had the privilege of being there. About a month ago, they were doing a dedication of a groundbreaking new hospital and took some after pictures. You can see what a great job they've done with the cleanup there. They've done a really excellent job of even rebuilding some homes. You can see in the background, but the park actually looks excellent. This is the same view, only turned to the south and east sky. This is that evening when the tornado had struck, again, everything's leveled. There's trees that have been debarked or they've just been snapped. You can actually see a couple of them that have been snapped down near the trunks, but everything's flat. But if you look at it now, you see big power poles that are up now, light poles, debris has been cleaned up. This is 8 months later, and it looks a heck of a lot better. And they were in a real time crunch to get the debris removed because they were given a deadline by the federal government to clean the debris up, or the money was going to run out. So they were given, I believe, until there was a time in August. And so a lot of people wanted to rebuild, but they couldn't because the efforts were being done to remove debris and clean up, because then Joplin was going to be on the hook for millions and millions and millions of dollars of cleanup. So they had to prioritize, even though many people wanted to try to rebuild and clean up their own property. Fires sparked. In the background there you can see the smoke. This is a 4-unit apartment complex.
Oh my God.
Right afterwards you can even see the very nice clouds behind the storm there. You look at it now, significantly better. Everything's been cleaned up. Looks really, really nice. You get another view of Cunningham Park that evening, just mangled. And many of you might have seen the Extreme Home Makeover. How many of you saw the Joplin one? It was actually really good. They did a good job of cleaning up Cunningham Park. They built a nice little basketball court there and a memorial and everything. The park looks really, really amazing at this point. But it became, a very interesting moment for the Weather Channel because it wasn't something we'd ever been able to achieve before. We broadcast live tornadoes before. We did it with Vortex during the first year. A beautiful tornado in Wyoming, right on it, but didn't hit anything. It was in the middle of nowhere, Wyoming, which we all hoped for. In this instance, it hit a populated city and went right through the most populated part of town, hitting neighborhood after neighborhood after neighborhood, hitting a hospital, fire stations, you name it, it hit it. However, I'll end this on a happy note. And I know I've gone quickly, but hopefully you all have a lot of questions. We went a month later to do a month later follow-up on Joplin. Shot many stories there, and one of the stories that really hit home for us and a lot of our viewers was the number of animals that were displaced after the tornado. They had the Humane Society there had 2 warehouses set up, one for cats, one for dogs. They had about 1,000 animals that they had recovered after the tornado. This was just one of them that had been there since Memorial Day, and this was June 27th, so this dog had been there about a month. They were having an adopt-a-thon that coming weekend, where they're going to give all the animals away, free of charge. Spayed, neutered, shots, fed, leashes, collars, you name it, and free to a good home. This one actually came home with me. This is Joplin. She spells it with a Y. And so I thought I'd end on a happy note that this one got to come home with me. And she's a 4-year-old golden retriever, and she is a real sweetheart. So actually, all the animals got adopted, by the way. They all went to 28 different states. So it was really cool. This one actually came home to me on a volunteer program called Pilots and Paws, which is a really great program. It's all nonprofit organization where private pilots donate their time and their planes, and they fly rescue animals to new homes for dogs that may be in need of specialty surgery, stuff like that. They volunteer their time, and that's how this one came to me from Joplin to Atlanta. So thank you all very much, and I'll take your questions if you have it.
How important is cell merger, like when you have 2 different cells merging with a supercell? Because normally it's detrimental to tornado formation, but how is it different in this case?
Well, I think in this instance, that little cell that came in from Miami, Oklahoma, I think it was just enough to, I think there was some southerly flow, warm, moist, southerly surface flow, which may have been enough to get this thing going, because on its own it didn't seem like it wanted to. And most instances you would think that would be detrimental. In this instance it seemed like it helped, because as soon as it got close enough, it formed rapidly. It went from, in a matter of just minutes, it went from an EF0 to an EF5. And so it intensified very, very rapidly. I mean, at the time, I thought I was the world's worst meteorologist. I didn't know that this was all going on. But it happened so quickly that you wouldn't expect that to happen. So I think it was the perfect storm, in essence, that it all came together like that. Although this was a tornado-warned storm for multiple counties to the west. And so it didn't go undetected. It's just when it ended up really intensifying to its max, it just happened to be right over Joplin.
With Joplin being your target for the day, where do you think you guys would have been positioned had you got an earlier start on the storm on that day, or you not get stopped by the weather? Where do you think you would have been in relation to where the tornado was?
Well, in an ideal situation, we would have been on the southern side. It's best for us to broadcast from that spot. So if you look, if I look here, say, ideally we would have been, due south of Joplin, 3 or 4 miles. Now I still don't know if we would have been able to see it because it had a lot of rain with it, but that would have given us a much better view and we would have been able to broadcast. Had we not gotten, to be very honest with you, I think the hail and the rain probably saved our lives. Otherwise we would have been right there. So I think all of our crew that looks back on it, we're like, wow, we had to stop, and maybe that was a good thing. Because otherwise, who knows where we would have ended up. Would we have been right in the middle of that when it touched down, and we never would have seen it coming. I think there were a lot of lessons learned for us as chasers that day about positioning, about safety, those types of things. We didn't necessarily at that time have a safety plan. But we didn't know what was going on ahead of us either. And I think a lot of the chasers I talked to that day kind of said the same thing. They were running for their lives at one point because they found themselves in the wrong spot. Dr. Roger Hill, who's a very well-known chaser, he was with his team in Joplin, and things started happening, and he said he just gunned it. He floored it, got out of there as quickly as he could because they were in a bad spot. I think that's what happened with this. It happened so quickly for so many chasers that there were circumstances that may have saved some lives. For us, it may have just been dumb luck.
Yeah, Mike, being there firsthand and everything, and me being a volunteer firefighter, one of the things I usually try to tell people in my training programs is you get into a situation like this, we're probably going to be extremely overwhelmed. Seeing the people involved in that, what would you tell them that they have to prepare beforehand to take care of themselves when we can't get to them?
Well, I mean, we stress preparedness so much. In this instance, seeking shelter, safe shelter, first of all, is going to save your life initially. In some instances, if you weren't underground, you really did not stand much of a chance of surviving. However, in the moments afterwards, when firefighters are overwhelmed, when police officers are overwhelmed, when any first responders are overwhelmed, the hospital is in shambles, and the doctors and nurses there can't respond the way they want to, you've got to find a way to protect yourself, to help yourself. In any place that is susceptible to tornadoes, I would say, just be ready. Have a big Rubbermaid container that has some first aid supplies in it, that has some food in it, that has some clothes in it. I mean, there were people literally walking down the streets that didn't even have I met a guy who didn't have his shirt on, it got ripped off of him. And he comes up to me and I say, he's dazed, and I say, are you okay? He's got this big muddy towel on his hand. He takes it off and he's got a gash that goes from his finger all the way to his wrist. And he's got a big muddy towel on it. So something as simple as having a first aid kit or something clean in a waterproof container, this guy could wrap his hand in a clean cloth and then walk himself down to the hospital to get treatment. So I would say those types of things. I mean, most of us don't think it's going to happen to us. We assume it's not. My thing I tell a lot of people is assume it is. Assume a tornado is going to hit you, and then you'll be more prepared for it. But having maybe basic first aid knowledge could have gone a long way potentially in helping a lot of the victims of this tornado that maybe didn't have life-threatening injuries, but weren't treated properly in the immediate hours after the tornado hit. Hope that answers your question.
I have a question. What's the differences and similarities that you saw from the Joplin tornado to, let's say, like the Tuscaloosa, Birmingham tornado, or any of the tornadoes from like the past, from like the April 3rd events and stuff like that?
Well, I think for me, when I did not visit Tuscaloosa after that happened in April. I saw the pictures on TV just like everybody else did, and it was, in a lot of instances, and that tornado was flattened. And when I was in Joplin, it looked very similar. And I think that to me, and I knew, what the situation was in Tuscaloosa. It was a month earlier, and we knew there were significant fatalities in Tuscaloosa. And in the hour after this tornado happened, I look out over the landscape, and to me it looks just like Tuscaloosa. So to me, that's when I kind of have an emotional moment. I thought to myself, gosh, there are a lot of people, unfortunately, that probably are not going to make it through this tornado. And so that was the comparison that I drew when I was there. And something instinctively in you says, this is a really, really bad situation. And when you've already, unfortunately, seen people lying in the streets, you already know it's bad. And then you keep looking, and as far as your eye can see, you see nothing but flat land. You assume the worst.
I got one question for you. If that southerly cell there had formed up with the main line of storms coming through, do you think the tornado might have not have been as bad as it would have if that cell joined up with the other cell?
We'll never know for sure. I think based on at least the reflectivity, you could say maybe it would have been weaker. I think it was going to form either way. Did that little merge intensify it? You can make the argument, yes, but I don't think we would ever know if it had never come in from Oklahoma what would have happened. So it's hard to say. It happened, it probably makes for a very interesting case study to break down, maybe the velocity signatures on it as well to see exactly what was happening on that. If you had a tight wind field that you could measure, you might be able to see something there. I don't know if we'll ever know for sure because we would never have known what would have happened otherwise.
Over the last couple of years, you've been out chasing. The number of chasers you're seeing out chasing, or I like to call it the chaser convergence, and how does that affect what you guys are out there doing?
We get very nervous when there's any type of risk in central Oklahoma because chaser convergence is extreme there, and the roads get very, very clogged. And it can make for a very dangerous situation. We have a lot of vehicles on the road. Everyone's wanting to take a picture of the tornado, and everyone has a right to be out there. I mean, there's nothing that says you can't be out there, and I think everyone should. If they want to, go ahead and do it. The problem is when you get in these big traffic jams, and it happened in 2010 during the May 10th event that happened in the Oklahoma City area, and there are cars everywhere. Vortex 2 is trying to get through, who has a large caravan as it is, of 40-plus vehicles, and then you've got literally hundreds of other chasers out there all on the same storm, and it makes for a traffic jam. What happens if you get a tornado that makes a right turn and slices right through that traffic jam? You're going to get chasers in their vehicles that are going to be in harm's way. And I think that's the real fear. I mean, I would never in a million years tell people not to chase. I would just say be smart about it. Know where you're going. Know the roads that you're on. Make sure you always have a secondary road to go to. But there are places you can chase, and you're the only person out there. Less populated areas, the Dakotas, Nebraska, portions of Kansas, eastern Colorado. Oklahoma is the worst spot. I mean, we just don't like to chase in central Oklahoma. There's too many people. And it's dangerous. Kansas is a great spot to chase. Eastern Colorado is awesome. You can see forever. And there's an advantage to that. The view is really good. you could see a tornado 50 miles away and make a smart decision. But chaser convergence is a problem. I think there's such a desire for people to go out there and see them, post their video on YouTube, those types of things. And so, you just have to be smart. But it's a problem. It's definitely a problem. There are certain areas where it's worse than others. Oklahoma City is terrible.
When you're chasing, what software do you guys use?
We'll use Barron's. A lot of chasers will use that. The cell phone service has gotten better, but if you have that satellite signal, you're guaranteed that you're going to get your radar that you need. And I would say for anybody that wants to do the planes, don't use AT&T. They're terrible on the planes. Verizon and Sprint, they'll go a long way for you. And we'll use, if I'm using something as simple as my iPad or my iPhone, Radar Scope, it's a $9.99 app. It's awesome. You can get a lot of information from there. And they have their dual pole data now for all the radars that have dual pole now. So it's a really awesome app to have. But if you have been mapping with the threat net, it's expensive. It's going to run you $1,000. But if you're a dedicated chaser, it's worth it.
That's what I used to use before GR3. I used to use the active radar thing without the warnings on it. Back in the day.
I've moved on from GR3. I've got GR2 analyst now.
Well, GR2, it's hard to work on what you're chasing. Like, yeah. The split storms and stuff like that.
Why do we see it not hitting like downtown?
Well, tornadoes don't discriminate. But if you just look at a map of the United States, Indianapolis is a tiny little speck on the map. And so, the odds of Indianapolis being hit, when you think about the geographic spread of the country, are pretty low. But we know that they hit cities. Nashville has been hit. Cincinnati has been hit. Memphis has been hit. Salt Lake City has been hit. There is a precedent for larger cities being hit. There's nothing magical about big cities that makes them immune from it. I would argue against the heat island effect. I don't think there's enough evidence to substantiate a heat island effect. Makes tornadoes curve around cities or the atmosphere weaken. I just think it's chance. Honestly, you may hear maybe some other guys that are up here that have a little more expertise than that can expand on that, but it's just chance. And many people would say, and would probably say it too, Indianapolis is overdue. The metro hasn't been hit in a long time. A lot of cities in Tornado Alley haven't been hit in a long time. But, Wichita, in the scope of the entire state, is a tiny little speck. And so its odds of being hit are, you would think, relatively low.
Mike, I would add that Indianapolis has been hit. September 20th, 2002, we had a long-track tornado go through the state, go through the south and east side, not too far away from where we are right now, actually. And then there was another event around Memorial Day of 2004, race day in fact, when we had tornadoes again on the southeast side, not far away from the track where there was 100,000 people outside attending a sporting event. So
I think one thing that about it is where exactly do they hit the metro? Are they going to hit a really populated part of town? Are they going to hit homes, that are compromised structures to begin with? Are they going to hit frame-built homes? Are they going to hit downtown? Best place, honestly, for a tornado to hit is probably downtown, where the buildings are the strongest. But you go to neighborhoods where the buildings aren't as strong, or homes, or trailer parks, or whatnot, and that's the worst place for it to hit, but it still could be the metro area.
And you can't forget the straight line wind cut. We also had there was a concert event going on during the summertime, and we had some straight line winds go through downtown, cracked some windows on some high rises, and shattered glass down on folks below. And that was within the last 5 years or so as well.
Well, and if you look at just last week, why there was so much attention given to it is because there were so many major cities that were in danger. There was Cincinnati and Louisville and Indianapolis and Nashville and Memphis and Lexington and all these major populated areas where you've got millions of people. We're not just talking an outbreak in the plains where there's not as dense a population. And so I think in an instance like last week, there was such heightened awareness because of the large population centers that were at risk.
Mike, first of all, thanks for what you do. It helps a lot of people. I'm just kind of curious, in the aftermath of Joplin, have they identified any things that might have helped to alleviate some of the damage or some of the things that occurred during? I realize it kind of sprung on them real quickly, but just kind of curious afterwards if they had anything.
Well, in one particular neighborhood where we were, and they're doing some things to correct this. A lot of the homes where we were didn't have basements. Some did, but not all of them. And so most people had to take shelter above ground. But a lot of people that we talked to recognized they probably weren't in a safe structure, and they knew there was a neighbor or something like that they could go to for shelter. Joplin is building, their city planner is taking FEMA dollars, and they're building, and it's still in the planning stage, they're building community shelters. Because they can't mandate, they can't put an ordinance that says you're building your home new again, you have to build a basement. They can't mandate that. It can be expensive. It's another $10,000 or $15,000 option for a homeowner, which their insurance may not cover. And so they're going to build community shelters in densely populated areas and hopefully space them out where people know where to go. They'll have training to know where to go on little drills. And I think that's one thing positive that comes out of Joplin. They're going to have some community shelters that will house anywhere from 25 to 50 people at a time.
Mike, over here. Two-part question. Are you going to keep chasing? And second of all, from that you talked about safety aspect and preparedness. Is there something, lessons learned that you do in chasing that you're going to consider now?
Yeah, a couple of things. We will be chasing this year. Most of May, probably. The weather will dictate that. But I think for us, personally, when we chase, safety is first and foremost now. Sometimes you don't always think about that when you're in the heat of the moment and the storm is right there and you're not paying attention to how fast you're driving. Hard lesson learned during the first test. Our crew got 6 speeding tickets. But when the moment comes, you don't realize how heavy your foot is when you're trying to get a tornado. But the lessons learned, and we haven't had a single ticket since. So, because we have to set an example. I mean, what's it say if we're out there, we're getting pulled over by the police, someone drives by with their iPhone, records it, posts it to YouTube, we're in a lot of trouble. So now we have to lead by example. So obeying all the traffic laws, first of all, makes you a much safer chaser. But this year, our entire team will also be trained in first aid. We'll have first aid equipment with us in all of our vehicles. And one thing that can be quite valuable as well is all of our vehicles will have defibrillators as well, because lightning is always a very big risk. And in fact, after this tornado, there was a police officer responding to search and rescue. He was actually struck by lightning and killed. And so those types of things will be things that we change this year to increase our awareness and hopefully set a good example for other chasers to do the same thing. All right. Thank you all very much.
One of the things I wanted to expand on, Mike, that first radar image that you had. Before we go on break. Right there. Right there. How many have heard the myth that once it starts raining, your tornado threat's done? Ever hear that myth? That's not true. Obviously, this showed the case. Thank you. One of the things I also wanted to point out that has gotten to be quite an issue over the last year is outdoor sirens. The central region that oversees us, the central region headquarters in Kansas City, did a service assessment for the Joplin tornado. And one of the things that was a popular comment is they heard the siren once, and that was it. So they thought after a while the threat was over, they would come out of their homes and here's this tornado bearing down.